Okay, well, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce John Snell to you. Actually, I think, needs little introduction. We all know John Snell because of his journalistic work in the city, anchor at Fox8 and reporter. But I want to just actually open up by saying something from personal experience with him, that he's genuinely a guy with a great personality and good people skills. Case in point, not sure if John will remember this or not, but 8 years ago, John and I got together to look for Rosie at Spoonville's in Metairie and Kenner. And it was October, and we were meeting at Lafreniere Park. And the World Series was on at the time, right? And I am a Massachusetts native and a diehard Red Sox fan. And I showed up for this get together with John, and he walks up wearing a St. Louis Cardinals windbreaker. They were playing the Cardinals in the World Series, right? Well, my hackles raised immediately, right? Yeah, but rather than it devolving to fisticuffs, somehow, and what happened immediately after this is a blur, but the next memory I have is that we are riding in his car with a classic Beatles LP playing on his tape deck, right? Matter of fact, as I recall, I was driving your car. Now, I know those of you, there's a lot of people in this group who accuse me of having a lame sense of humor, right? So you're probably waiting on the edge of your seat in terror that I'm going to say that the song was "Baby, You Can Drive My Car." No, I'm not going there, all right? It's just chill, just chill. At any rate, no, I think it was one of the post Sergeant Pepper CDs. But at any rate, so we found a spoonbill in the airline highway in the drainage canal. And, I've thought of that back over this day, over the years. And I remember the spoonbill a little bit, but what I mainly remember is, how did he talk me down from that so rapidly, to where we were riding in his car? Anyway, so fast forward about 4 years, the next time I'm birding with him, which is in this picture right here. This is an old near Algiers Point on Opelousas. And just another illustration of his people skills. I've been to this colony many times, counting these night heron nests, right? But I show up with John, and all of a sudden, within a matter of a few minutes, we've been invited into somebody's house, into their backyard, with this guy who's raising the orphaned baby night herons. Does that ever happen to me when I'm birding by myself? Of course not. All right, well, I'm playing around a lot with John, but now to the serious introduction. John has been involved in TV news in the New Orleans area for 38 years. And I think probably as far as speakers we've had at Orleans Audubon Society, he's probably the closest we've had to somebody you could legitimately say needs no introduction, right? I think you'd ask the average New Orleanian who John Snell is, they already know, okay? And it's not just his work as a TV anchor, it's also as a reporter. He's got a good journalistic chops. These include a documentary he did on our coastal defenses that was critically acclaimed, actually won some awards, right? So he is, and I can't finish the introduction without mentioning his website, okay? On Facebook. The man is not only a great journalist, he is a skilled photographer, okay? You could literally, now I know it's his website, I'm sure he'll mention it, but he may not do it as much justice as it deserves. The Facebook page is John Snell Fox8. So it sounds like it would just be about news, but it's not. It's a treasure trove of natural history photographs from the area, okay? You could literally spend hours on this site just going photograph to photograph, right? He's got themes that are very, very popular amongst folks like us at Orleans Audubon: birds, wetlands, lots of sunrises and sunsets. And I really feel like, and I'm sure you'll pick this up too, when you look at his photographs, you can feel in his compositions a real affection for the area, right? So I'm sure he'll mention it, but I highly recommend that John Snell Fox8 Facebook page. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce our speaker for tonight, John Snell. Take off your mute, John. Take off your mute, John.
Okay,
yeah.
There we go. Thank you very much, Peter, for that. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Great.
good. That was very kind of you, Peter. Thank you. I've almost left the meeting when you started talking about the Red Sox. And the only other problem with Peter's introduction is it's actually longer than my presentation. But anyway, we'll try to get through this. Let me see. No, seriously, thank you. That was very nice of you. You apparently are still sharing, so I need you to stop sharing if you could, Peter, and then I'll get to my little thing here. Let's see if we can get this. This worked before, guys. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry we can't do this in person. There we go. Somebody give me a thumbs up. Donata, you've got everything on your end, okay? All right, great, terrific. All right, so I was talking with everybody a little while before we started, and if you had told me 15 years ago that I would be speaking in person or in a Zoom meeting to a group of accomplished birders, I would have wondered what you were smoking or drinking that night, because this kind of just happened by accident. I suspect that some people who are really passionate birders are probably people who went on hikes with mom and dad, or maybe had friends or a love interest or somebody who was really into birding at one point and inspired them. Some people come to it through photography, and this is a story of my sort of accidental journey to becoming a birder and knowing what a king eider is, a picture I took in Alaska. And it starts in June of, I think, 2013, actually, when my son and I were out west. This is a picture we took with my little Fuji $350 digital camera of snow in June. And I couldn't believe I had spent the grand total of $350. That seemed outrageous at the time. So around that time, when we started going out west, my son and I, one day he announced when he was about 11 that he wanted to go to the Four Corners. And although I paid attention in geography class, I said, the what? Unaware that there was really only one spot in America where 4 states met in the same spot: Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. And they have a nice little marker there, which I was so not into photography seriously at the time that I didn't even bother to take a picture of it that at least has survived. Or it was that time that the other computer blew up, but that's another story and we won't go there this evening. So I had my fancy little Fuji camera, and one day on the day after Christmas, this would have been 2003, I think, I had driven down from O'Hare Airport to my brother's house in Northern Illinois, and I got up the next morning and I said, man, I saw all these beautiful red barns in the snow. I'm going to go out and take a picture of a red barn, find one and take it. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And what he meant was, who are you? Because that was kind of surprising to him at the time. And that sort of spawned an interest in landscape photography, iconic places like Denali, what some people know as Mount McKinley, but Denali National Park in Alaska. This picture, by the way, I'll digress. I have a bad habit of going off on tangents. My wife calls them, because I do coastal stories, a delta. So sometimes, I'll go off in an area for about 30 seconds or so, and she'll say delta, and I'll say, I'm sorry, yes, the answer is yes. So this is from 26 miles away, if you can believe it, from the base of that gigantic mountain, which actually from its base to the top rises more than Everest. Everest starts higher. And then as my equipment got a little better, photography equipment, and I got more seriously into taking trips out west, invariably I would have somebody come up to me and ask me, if that was a certain type of hummingbird, or if, hey, is that an eared grebe? And I would say, beats me. I didn't know, because I was at a stage probably around 2006, 2007, where I might see an interesting bird like this in Yosemite, but didn't even remember taking it until I started doing this presentation and just found it recently. And then as I progressed, I started getting into the iconic Louisiana birds. The story of this picture, which, thanks for the plug, Peter, you can find on my Facebook page. The story of this picture is that I was out in West Bay with a cattle rancher named Earl Armstrong, who's very active in coastal issues. And we stumbled upon these pink ornaments in a tree, which scattered as we got a little close to the, we tried to sneak up on them. You know, the Audubon ethics are you're not supposed to cause a bird to intentionally fly away from you. That wasn't our intention. Believe me, we wanted them in the tree, but they were a little skittish. But that was one of the, I think, largest collections of roseate spoonbills that I had ever seen in one particular tree. This is, if you haven't been to Jefferson Island, I suspect maybe everybody in the group has, but if you happen to be new to the area, each spring, I didn't go this year, but I'm told it happened, though it was late. There's this marvelous display of these iconic Louisiana birds, as Peter would tell you, almost wiped out a century ago for their feathers, which have staged a comeback. They're in some trouble in Florida, as I understand it, but they seem to be flourishing and expanding their range, including into New Orleans. This is a picture from the Joe Madère Boardwalk, which is one of my little favorite spots. It's grown up a little bit in recent years, so it's not always as easy to spot things, but here in morning light was a spoonbill in its reflection. And I think it's just really remarkable to see this kind of thing within the city limits of, you know, one of the large cities of America, depending upon how you define it, the largest or second largest urban wildlife refuge in the country. I have never been able to decide if I consider the spoonbill or the eagle to be my favorite large Louisiana bird. This is a picture, and it's the only reference I was actually going to make to Facebook was that this I happened to post on my Facebook page. I almost didn't post it because I don't like the fence in the background. I took this out my back door one day when I happened to be looking, and there was an eagle going for a fish successfully. So you never know sometimes what will resonate with people and what will not. And then this person happened in my life, my wife, who is some kind of animal whisperer and always seems to be able to spot animals from a distance, including this little deer on a trip that we took to Tennessee. There's a great birding spot north of, and I can't remember the name of it now off the top of my head, but somebody may know, north of Gatlinburg, that was set aside a state park specifically for birding. And we stumbled upon these deer, which just wanted to hang out with her. But someone said to me one day on Facebook, gee, that's nice that she held your camera. And I said, no, that's her camera, because she got into photography and taught me a little bit about songbirds, which I knew nothing about. And this being, I think, my favorite small bird in Louisiana, the painted bunting, which is just looks like something that was, you know, when you go to heaven, you want to say, hey, nice job, God, on that painted bunting, because if you haven't seen one, they're really shy. They're very elusive, I find, and they're really hard to get in the shrubbery if you're patient. As coincidentally, as Peter mentioned, I am a lifelong St. Louis Cardinals fan, so there's your St. Louis Cardinals picture right there. That there's no other purpose for that picture in this presentation other than that. The other thing you need to understand about what happened to me in my birding is that they are paying me to do this, suckers. And that is, you know, I've had the opportunity through doing coastal stories to see some really incredible sights, including this newborn pelican that the parents had gotten off the nest for just a brief period of time as he waits for his two siblings, triplets, in a nest. Not the kind of thing that I would have ever really expected to have an opportunity to do, but we've gone out to these islands where these pelicans flourish still to this day. And I've had that chance. And what happened was, as I delved more into coastal stories, that allowed me to do a little more in the way of photography. You know, 20 years ago, if you took out a camera and started taking pictures, as the reporter, they would look at you and say, what are you doing? Do your job. But now they expect you to do that sort of thing. And, you know, here's another example of these wonderful rookeries. This one has a kind of a footnote, though. This is Cat Island. there were a bunch of cat islands around the area, but this one's Cat Island, Barataria Bay, which unfortunately was already in trouble. And then in the aftermath of the BP oil spill, not entirely because of the oil, but maybe hastening its demise, it vanished before our eyes in the space of a few years. Our intention was to go back and check on this island, which had been heavily oiled in this actually series of but 4 islands, maybe once every 6 months. And by 6 months later, they were in terrible shape. Those islands, those 4 islands no longer exist. Which brings me to what I think is, on a more serious note, one of the really important issues from the standpoint of birders. You know, every year, the migration happens twice a year, more spectacular for obvious reasons when the birds are coming back in after flying across the Gulf of Mexico, this crazy journey that sometimes these little birds take, and they will find, you know, a landing spot, for example, here in Grand Isle. These are the low and, excuse me, the medium and high scenarios for the prediction for land loss or gain over the course of the next 50 years if nothing is done along Louisiana's coast. And that's a very important caveat to add to this. The green areas represent those areas where there is the expectation that land would form. And you see there's this red area. The high scenario is actually equaling roughly what we've lost so far, which is 2,000 square miles of land. I think, let me see, I thought I might have gone past one. Forgive me, I'm having trouble moving this thing along. Oh, okay, here we go. Let's see. Okay, there we go. This is the low. No, I take that back. I apologize. I thought I had. All right, so here's the high scenario on the bottom. That's the one with the 2,000 square miles. There is the state's coastal master plan, which is a $50 billion estimate of what it would cost over the course of, you know, the next half century. This was frankly a pipe dream until, ironically enough, the BP oil spill happened, and it provided Louisiana with about $9 billion for plus, actually, because nobody's able to put an exact number on exactly how much will go. There are still some monies being lined up, but a good number of these projects will possibly be done. These are Barrier Island projects that are envisioned in the future. The pink area here is some of the levee formations, including the Morganza to the Gulf levee in the Terrebonne Parish area. One interesting little caveat about that is 15, 20 years ago, a lot of coastal activist environmental groups were very concerned about building a levee and interrupting the natural hydrology of the flow, the tides coming in and that sort of thing. And now the land loss is so severe that people are not as concerned about that. Levees actually can save land, as we've seen in some cases, though it's still good to have wetlands obviously outside levees. Levees can actually save land in the case of Bayou Sauvage, for example. This is the most costly and in many ways the most controversial project that's being talked about, the Mid-Barataria sediment diversion. This would take up to 70,000 cubic feet per second, a very large river actually, and cut a channel in the river. The Corps of Engineers put guide levees and through many months out of the year total, send Mississippi River water into Barataria Bay with the aim of mimicking the river's land building powers. It would save 35 square miles of land, excuse me, create 35 square miles of land and perhaps save some others. There are, however, some collateral issues involved in that, and that is possible damage to the seafood industry and possible near extinction for bottlenose dolphins. It's a really fascinating argument from a reporter's point of view, from the point of view of the environment. There is no question it will do some harm, especially in the early years. It will also, if you believe the computer models, and you're talking to a communications major here, so I'm certainly not in a position to question, with my knowledge set, the accuracy of these computer models, but the people who work on it are pretty confident that they know a lot about the river and how it works. You could make an argument that this fishery is going away anyway, that because of sea level rise and other factors and subsidence, we have sea level rise, and the more serious factor is relative sea level rise, which is the fact that our delta is sinking as it's disconnected from the river. So I'll try to put that one down the middle for you, but there are, some negative aspects to that all. What I want to get a little more positive though too, what the master plan and this just flood of money has done for us is allow the state, for example, to build from over here near the western part of the Mississippi, south of head of passes where the river splits off into these channels, all the way over to west of Port Fourchon now. This has basically been reassembled. I mean, we're talking super domes and super domes worth of sand in these projects over the course of the last 10 years. Here's one of them at Queen Bess Island, which many here may be familiar with in the Grand Isle area. This was a picture that I took last year of, this was a shell basically surrounded by some rocks. It now, last year, I think hosted something like 5,000 nesting pelicans. It's one of the 2 or 3 largest rookeries in all of the state. Quick little delta I'll take for you. This is your lanyap. If you have never visited Hawaii, take the chance to do so, because surprisingly, there was just this amazing array of birds there, like some of them imported, some of them that have flown through, the red-crested or Brazilian cardinal. You just never know who you'll find standing out in a crowd on one of the islands along a little pedestrian walkway. Or this picture I got of, I guess, a mallard that was reflecting in a pool of gold. And if you look closely at the bottom of the frame, you see, oh, those are goldfish. So anyway, that's my little lanyap moment for you, is to talk about what a surprising, amazing birding site Hawaii was. So I'll save the best for last. Somebody asked me once, what's your favorite picture? And I said, I don't know. I haven't taken it yet. But the truth is that in some ways, I guess I have taken it. This picture, which looks as if it is maybe out somewhere in the wilds of Louisiana, I actually took at City Park. And after I had gotten into photography about 10 years ago now, I went out and bought my first really big lens, and I was trying it out. And I went to City Park just to see if I could take some pictures of birds. And this character started swimming or flying right toward me on takeoff. And I real quickly turned the camera and fired off. This is the second frame I shot, of probably about 10 frames a second at the time. And one of about 2 or 3 that actually came out because he was moving so quickly. And it just goes to show that sometimes you can get a little surprised. But that was literally the second picture I ever took with this lens. I've never taken anything close to it with that since then. So that's my little positive note to end on, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you so much, John. That was really beautiful, such impressive photography. If people want to ask questions, you could type them into the chat and we can ask them there, or you could unmute yourself and ask them directly. John, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So what's your advice to people who want to get into bird photography but feel a little intimidated? What's just some beginner?
First thing you got to do is have fun. The advantage, I mean, anybody in this group who's a serious birder would have an advantage right out of the bat, because you understand bird behavior. You understand, the times of year, times of day. Obviously, things early in the morning are your best chance, not long after sunrise. Although, frankly, I've found in a couple of places in my travels recently that 9 o'clock in the morning was still okay, depending upon what type of bird or what kind of circumstance you are going for. For anybody who, there are people ask me, did you take lessons? And I would say, and I'm always deeply flattered when people like my photography, because I really am truly an accidental photographer. I never was the person in the family who took pictures when my son was 6 or 7 years old. But I worked at a TV station, and I worked with some amazing photographers. So, people would ask me, did you take lessons? And I would say, yes. I sat next to photographers for 25 years in a news car, asking them questions. Why did you do that? Why did you get down low? What do you mean by a vanishing point? What's an S curve? wide, those sorts of things. And it wound up being a class in that sense. There are some wonderful bird books where you can get nature books about birding photography. There's a lot of stuff online that didn't exist when I started. And then just for the mechanics of the camera, there is just a wonderful collection of books by a fellow named Scott Kelby, who claims to be the world's leading author of digital how-to books. He's a photographer and a Photoshop guru, Scott Kelby, and it's Digital Photography 1 and then 2, 3, and 4. He is a funny character. Peter, you would like reading his books. He's got a corny sense of humor, and he unlike a lot of books where you open it up and you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm 35 pages, I'm 102 pages into this book, I don't think I've learned anything yet. You will learn something. There's a lesson for every different subject matter. He gives you the text on one side and a picture to demonstrate on the other side. And I read his first book, I think, on a flight somewhere. It was delightful. So that would be my quick little old school suggestion.
Great suggestions. Thank you so much. I jotted down the names, so I'm gonna check out those books. You have some really nice questions in the chat, so if you want, I can share those with you. And yeah, they're building. So here's the first one from Terrence is, where's your favorite place to bird in Louisiana? I find favorite questions are hard.
Probably Jefferson Island, although I didn't go there this year. Jefferson Island is Rip Van Winkle Gardens. I'll answer this question assuming not everybody knows where it is. It's Rip Van Winkle is next to the lake that actually was swallowed up by the oil rig when they punctured a salt dome. You can find out about that on YouTube. But there is a wonderful artificial rookery that the fellow who owns Rip Van Winkle Gardens made, and with the intention of it being it's a copse of cypress surrounded by a moat, and he did it with the intention of having birds. Didn't work. One day there was a commotion outside, and voila, there was this massive rookery of spoonbills and herons and whatnot. Grand Isles are probably a close second, especially for songbirds. If you're really into the songbirds, it's tough to beat Grand Isle.
All right. What about, do you keep a life list? Wendy wanted to know.
No, but my wife does. So I do kind of in the back of my head sometimes. I tell you one thing I would like to do. I would like to see the crane migration in Nebraska in March every year when they have a big crane festival. You have to be a serious birder or photographer. They take photographers out. It's on a national wildlife refuge along the Platte River, or maybe it's a state refuge, come to think of it. Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but they take you out overnight. You spend the night in the late winter or early spring cold along the Platte River, and when you wake up in the morning, you're surrounded by thousands of migrating cranes. It's amazing.
That sounds beautiful.
I haven't been there, and I was there about 30 years ago when they didn't have any of the infrastructure set up. But my understanding is you go out before sunrise, and you basically wait on this, blind or something on a sand flat in the river, and then the sun comes up and all the cranes are roosting there. It's about 500,000 sand-hill cranes.
It is the biggest migration, correct me if I'm wrong, of any large birds in America.
I think that would be correct. Well,
certainly cranes.
Certainly cranes. There's probably some places that have claimed bigger numbers of raptors, but in a single day. But it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of awesome, you had another question about, have you ever been able to take a picture of the Milky Way? And
yes, I have. I used to have one somewhere in the house, but I think I took it down when I moved. I've done it a few times. My schedule at the moment, I wake up at 3 in the morning to go to work. So, and I volunteered to do this. Wow. But anyway, I'm off tomorrow morning so I can enjoy your company. But this is bedtime. This actually is bedtime right now for me. So if I doze off, just, nudge me or something. But it makes it hard. The Milky Way in June is sort of that wonderful arch. And then it's getting more high in the sky or at least higher this time of year. I've taken it out west a couple of times. I would like to go back to Big Bend National Park, which is just, if it were anywhere closer to, it has some wonderful birding, by the way, but if it were anywhere closer to a major metropolitan area, it would be, in my opinion, one of the great popular parks in the country. It's just so tough to get to. My son and I went, by the time he reached high school, he was a little bit of a nature nerd himself. And for his high school graduation, I said, pick your vacation. And he planned a trip out west, including to Big Bend. And we were in Texas on Memorial Day weekend driving along. And he said, Dad, we've been in Texas for about 8 hours and everybody on the road has, travel gear and whatnot. And they're all from Texas because it just goes on forever.
That is a long.
But that was a delta because what I was trying to lead up to was the skies is one of the darkest places in America. So the skies are really dark. You can get the Milky Way kind of down Highway 1. Maybe Plaquemines might be better before you get to Venice. There's a lot of light, especially once you get to the oil fields. I've done a couple spots in Mississippi, and I had the most luck when I really tried in the Sierra Nevadas.
It's funny to think that when we were kids, you could just see it right here in New Orleans, but those days, it's not the same. Debbie Brooks says, so happy to have joined the Zoom. You're a local treasure. I'd like to volunteer for one of the local environmental concerns. Any suggestions?
Yeah, well, if you want a really hands-on experience, the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana regularly does marsh grass plantings. Some of these islands that I've showed you, or places out. There's a wonderful spot called Big Mar, which is filling in near the Carnarvon Freshwater Diversion Project. It was open water after some levees failed, kind of a square-shaped pool of water that has filled in over the course of the last 15, 20 years. And they regularly do plantings or even cypress tree plantings out there. And I suspect they will do some more. There are also some cypress tree plantings on the North Shore taking place now, because since they closed the Mr. Go, the salinity levels are such that these activists and scientists believe that they can now bring some of the cypress trees back in places like Madisonville or Tangipahoa Parish, for example. So the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana, or the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Fund, or excuse me, the Pontchartrain Conservancy now, sorry, Pontchartrain Conservancy would be a couple of places you could check to see if they know of any plantings.
The next couple of questions, maybe I'll tell them to you together and then you can, they may be linked perhaps, but one question was, have you ever been out on a boat and taken photos of birds and whales, for example? And then is there a bird you would really like to see in Louisiana that you have not yet seen?
The scarlet tanager, whoops, about fell off there, guys. And I didn't even have anything to drink. This is all I've had to drink, I swear. The scarlet tanager, I got a junky shot of it over just too hot, the sun, really harsh light. It comes in each spring, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. And, kind of with the migration. So I have a shot of that, but I'd like to get a better shot of that. My wife has this ability to look up and say, oh, look, a Mississippi kite. That's a half a mile away, and she's got a couple of really great shots recently, actually. That's another one that I don't have anything that just knocks me out. Is it the Crestal, the American Crestal? Is that, I think we have that here, don't we? Is that the one I'm thinking of? I don't have a lot. So there are a few.
Should we put you on a hotline? Like if we see a scarlet tanager, you want us to... There's one in Audubon Park. Come
right.
on.
Hey, right, I'm on the desk. Hey, I gotta leave. What's the matter? I've got an emergency. And then on a boat, I've been on a boat. I've actually been on a boat many times, taking pictures, especially for the Pelican Rookeries as some coastal project was going along. You can get some great shots often on boats because obviously, you can sometimes sneak up on them in their habitat, sometimes not. I find that great herons are really interesting. I was out, where was I? I was someplace the other day where, and I'm trying to remember where I went, where there were some great blue herons right hanging out with everybody, not bothered at all by people. You'll find that in Orange Beach and in places like that. Oh, I know where it was. It was over in Pass Christian. I was shooting a sunrise last weekend, and these herons were not in the least bit disturbed. You can't get within 200 yards of a heron in the Louisiana bayou if it's not been around people a lot. So it's really interesting to see how animals and birds will adapt to people.
Yeah, so true. Yes, it's really interesting how they can habituate. Wendy was asking about, oh, could you please bird Housey Beach so that the casino does not go there? Maybe you could document some of the bird life out there.
Is there a lot of bird life out there?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I mean, people forget that before Lakeshore Estates and all of that was built on that side, there was a failed effort to keep that area from being developed. I'm a reporter. I'm not somebody I get paid not to take a position on controversial issues. I'm not a crusader. I do think that the overall message is important. I think there's too much opinion that's mixing its way into journalism. We are all creatures of our own experience. Obviously, there are stories I have done about the coast that I'm motivated by my interest in the subject. Cat Island was a subject we kept going back to, that island that in Barataria Bay disappeared. And I did ask myself, at what point am I just exposing the loss of this island? Because that's really what we were trying to catalog, is how quickly it was going away. And at one point, am I seen as advocating for the expenditure of the millions of dollars it would take, several $1 million, to save it, which did not happen, which a lot of scientists felt was a lost cause. So I know that wasn't the essence of your question, but that is something that I think journalists have to struggle with and balance. Is especially if they're interested in a given topic. It's one thing to expose the topic, to expose a concern, and that might be a legitimate story, without doing so in a way that crosses a line.
There was another comment about lots of great blue herons hanging out at the old Broadwater Beach Marina in Biloxi. I think just kind of a FYI from Terrence.
Okay.
And then Debbie Brooks wanted to mention, I don't know, maybe this would be worth putting in a news slot, but talking about the importance of keeping your bird feeders clean, so that if you do decide to feed birds, you keep the feeders clean to prevent the spread of disease, which is an important message. But John, I actually have another request. I've had this dream that accompanying the weather report would be the bird report, right? So in the winter, in the fall and spring migrations, when the radar picks up bird migration, that they would say, like, oh, we could see an influx of migrants,
That's interesting. If you watch Shelby Latino in the morning around sunrise, she will frequently point out that there are birds around the lakefront on the North Shore that have taken off, and that's what we're seeing. I don't remember if she said anything about or made the connection to migrating birds, but I will point that out to her.
John, I did email David Bernard. I think he's getting tired of my emails, but I did, because he's my favorite weather person. So I emailed him and told him, and he kind of emailed me back wow, I didn't know that. I better not do this again.
Shelby got a little bit, and Shelby's a day away from going on maternity leave, but she has actually gotten fascinated by seeing the birds. We see them regularly at sunrise, where they'll take off. And I mean, I think we've had, those of us who are birders especially, been out, and I guess I'm a birder, I'm a bird photographer anyway. I may know less about all the species of birds than anybody else in the room, in the chat here, but I've just have had these sometimes amazing experience where I was at Audubon Park one day, and just out of nowhere, these white ibis just took flight, and by the hundreds and hundreds, and you just sit back in awe of these things, like, where did they all come from? And I've also seen them come in at night. I don't shoot in Audubon Park as much as I used to, as often as I used to, but that's just one experience.
Yeah, so many amazing inspirations in nature. There are, okay, Peter says, John, you're a birder, we're claiming you. And then some people have pointed out that Shelby has talked about the migration showing up on radar, and people have talked about the bird radar. So my apologies for missing that, but more would always be good. And then Terrence is also interested some more in, like, any other astronomical events you may have photographed, like Comet Neowise and or the conjunction?
No, not specifically. I've done a couple of like meteor showers over the years, and invariably I'll get out there and there's too much light pollution and I'll wind up shooting something else. I shot a picture of the Chifuncta River Lighthouse with about a 30-second exposure. It began as a trip to get a meteor shower, and it turned into, hey, we're out here from a boat on a place where I normally can, and there was so much light pollution on the horizon in this 30-second exposure that it almost looked like the sun was coming up.
Yeah.
I would like to do more of that, and I hope to do more of that, but as I say, my hours right now are, although I'm not in any hurry or anything tonight, fortunately, but I basically go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, a little before that, and I wake up at 3 in the morning. So just take your normal schedule and add 3 hours. For most people, this would be still pretty early in the evening. So it makes it difficult to go out and do something at 2 and 1 in the morning. It's the middle of the night.
John, since you've done so much birding out west and then so much birding in Louisiana, do you have any kind of, I don't know, just any thoughts or impressions of how those two environments kind of differ? Has anything struck you in terms of just the differences between, like, birding and photography out west versus here? Anything that?
No, I think the thing out west is just different species. I almost threw a Steller's jay in this, instead of a couple of the other birds. The Steller's jay is this just really wonderful, larger than a blue jay, but somewhat similar creature. I chased him all over Yosemite National Park trying to find one, and the best picture I got, unfortunately, had a soda bottle behind it, so of the bird itself. So I've gotten a few of it. Magpies. It's funny how things work. I was out west on a trip, and with a group of photographers. The only time I've ever taken a trip with photographers with a guide, from probably about 9 years ago, and there were some ravens, and a couple of us were really excited to be, oh, look at those ravens, it's a great, and the guide was looking at us like, what are you taking pictures of? Because he looked at them like they were just large crows. So some of it is just, whatever your perspective is.
I wanted to mention to you, many years ago, I think I was out at, I think you went to Money Hill and photographed an eagle nest out there. Did you go out there?
I did, yes. Yeah.
I was out there with you one time.
You were in the group? Oh, okay.
A long time ago. And I just wanted to mention to you that nest has since fallen from that tree. It's not there any longer, but they did re-nest, and it's actually in quite a beautiful location. So that might be another spot to check out, because
I appreciate that. I had a Money Hill in sometime ago when I took that. I need to reach out maybe again. I talked about the picture I posted on of the eagles. I enjoy going out every year and taking pictures of bald eagles. I didn't do as much this year. I don't want to derive my total reward for photography based on some Facebook like or Facebook reach. I do have the advantage, my approach to Facebook is, I don't want to be just another person on Facebook posting, gee, the president said this today, what do you think? There's enough of that. There's enough negativity. I think it's a way to communicate a love for Louisiana, especially the natural beauty of Louisiana, and to, I guess, sort of have people relate to you in that sense and relate to others in that way. I'll post a link to some story from time to time. The exception being when we have a hurricane threat, I'll kind of go into, hurricane mode and try to reach the audience that way. So I just think that doesn't directly answer what you meant, but that was kind of my little aside.
Yeah. Kathy said, I love that, John. Well said. You had another question here about, have you ever birded outside of the US?
I haven't done a lot outside the US, and now we're in trouble because we just bought a travel trailer. So, my goal, I've been to all 50 states. I'm really fortunate. I've been to all 50 states. I did Hawaii on my 60th birthday. When you do that, that makes it hard to travel outside the country. I've only been outside the country a few times. There wasn't a lot of birding involved. In fact, there was no birding involved when I went to the Netherlands. So no, I'd like to do some more, but I just, like I say, we maybe we'll bird in Mexico, someplace we can drive to.
Jennifer can provide you with a really good itinerary for Ecuador, and I just got stuff, and it's pretty
Well, there you go.
For bird photography. And then Debbie wanted to know if you had any favorite places to bird in North Carolina.
Let me think about that before I dismiss that. I've enjoyed birding in the Smokies. We've gotten, goldfinches are beautiful and yellow, American goldfinches, when they fly away from here, especially. I've done in that general area of North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. There's nothing, Cashiers, Franklin, some of those places which are kind of off the beaten path a little bit are nice. But not necessarily any more than the Great Smoky Mountains region, unless I'm missing something. I haven't done a lot of coastal Carolina stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then Terrence said a travel trailer sounds wonderful for birding. So,
well, that was actually part of the idea.
All right, those are all the questions in the chat. Did anyone else want to jump in or ask any other questions?
John, I have a couple of suggestions of places photographic opportunities in the New Orleans area you may not be aware of, because they're not really publicized. I'll just email you directly though.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. I think there's a spot down in Plaquemines Parish. I'm trying to remember. I guess it's Lake Hermitage Road that has some, in the springtime, some black-crowned night herons, and I say some dozens down that road. That's another spot. Venice, I've had a lot of luck in Venice with some of the larger birds down once you get outside the levee system. As I said, Grand Isle, just down Highway 1 itself. I enjoy Big Branch Marsh in Lacombe for some of the larger birds, though lately, it's interesting. Things kind of come and go where you'll have a real hotspot for a while. I haven't seen a large bird in the last 2 or 3 trips I've made there, so you never know what you'll get. But then I say that, and I'll go there next time, and there will be 50 birds. I'll tell you a funny little story about taking the opportunity. When I was first into photography, in the first couple of years, I went one day down Boy Scout Trail in the Big Branch Marsh outside Lacombe. And it was a long day and I was tired, and I walked down their boardwalk and I looked over and there were about 50 wood ducks. And I thought to myself, gosh, that's nice. I'll have to come back someday and get this shot. And everybody can unmute, so you can now laugh at me because I've never seen anything like it since. And it was a lesson for a new photographer about the importance of really seizing upon something when you can. The other time, this isn't birding, the other time something happened to me is, people will sometimes, say, gosh, don't you ever take a bad picture? And I take that as a nice compliment, to which I sometimes have replied, you don't see what I throw out. And I was driving down Lake Road, which was partially flooded in Lacombe, and there were all these bugs going across the road lit up by my headlights. By the thousands, it appeared. And I stopped and looked, and they were those little green frogs. I don't think bullfrogs gather by that, but it was unbelievable. And I once again thought, at the end of a long day, well after sunrise or sunset, I'd have to get out of the car, back up, get out of the car, put my boots on, go back in and get them. And I have, in all the times, the hundreds of trips now, a couple hundred trips I've taken out there, and a couple dozen in flooding conditions, I've never seen it again. So the moral of the story is, when you see an opportunity, take it.
John, so on John's Facebook page, I think very recently, if I remember right, you got a great picture of brown pelicans on those posts at the end of Lake Road with the New Orleans skyline in the background. I just wanted to mention that the reason you can't see the Superdome is indeed the curvature of the Earth. I've done the math on that, right? So,
yeah, Facebook being what it is, there are a couple of times when I've had people say, "You're a liar," and including a friend one day from a job years ago who just jumped at me over a post from Lake Road, there is the curvature of the Earth, so you can't see the bottom of the Superdome. You can see the top of it. And somebody else who said it's impossible to see past 16 miles, and that's a fake picture. And the other time was when I took a picture of, which has been done by a number of photographers. Matthew Hinton from the Picayune kind of started a little trend of people going out and getting ships passing in front of the St. Louis Cathedral when the river is really high, and it's a fascinating shot. And that produced on FaceCrack a bunch of negative comments of, "Gee, that's fake. Where's the bottom of the cathedral?" And then you have to nicely go on and say, well, it's a compressed lens, and it has the effect of taking the picture and sort of compressing it. And there's the levee there, Washington Artillery Park, so you can't see the bottom of it. And sometimes, so whenever I post that picture now of Lake Road, Peter, you may notice, I've done it a few times, the curvature of the Earth keeps us from seeing the bottom of the buildings, and it keeps the whack jobs away.
It does occur to me that one of the things I was going to email to you might be of general interest to the audience tonight, and that is, it's not widely known, but the wading bird rookery in the Bartholomew Golf Course, Pontchartrain Park, like across the street from Suno, they don't have golf on Mondays anymore, right? So it's getting late in the season now for visiting that rookery. Do you know about that, John? I've
heard about it, but I've never gone out there, so I appreciate that.
It's awesome. There's 9 species of wading birds. For some reason, they're very, they don't care at all that you walk right up to them, and you're just separated from them by a little 20-meter wide moat, basically.
Right. But put that same species in the marsh, and they'll fly away.
And of course, they've all got the really bright, soft colors when they're on the nesting grounds. It's great. There aren't any spoonbills there, but I am going to email you about a spoonbill spot. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
At any rate, yeah. At least for now, Mondays you can walk on that golf course without having to worry about dodging golf balls, which is a big improvement. And,
we think of birding spots as near roadways for obvious reasons. There are all kinds of amazing birding areas that can be accessed through even kayaks or especially boats with motors, down the mouth of the river, down a couple of those lesser known passes when you get out, and then when you get out on the marsh, where you'll see 50 or 100 roseate spoonbills that are off some canal that no one sees, for the most part.
John, I know that it can be tough when you have negative comments or naysayers out there, but I think your fan club is much larger. And if you open up the chat for this meeting, you'll see a lot of very enthusiastic thank yous from the audience about how they enjoyed the stories and really appreciate your photography and are just very appreciative. So
and that's very sweet of you. I really appreciate that. I was a little hesitant with doing the this is my story thing, hoping I didn't bore everybody, but I thought people might be able to relate to it, at least in a few cases. Maybe some parallels to how people kind of woke up one day and said, "Oh, I'm a bird nerd." Or the day I was at Audubon Park when I knew anything about didn't know anything about songbirds, but some lady walked up in the hiking area there and said, "What kind of birds are those?" And I said, "That's a great egret, that's a yellow-crowned night heron." And then I rattled off 3 or 4 more, and she looked at me and said, "Oh, okay." And I thought to myself, "Ooh, what's happening?"
You're a birder. All right. Joelle, Peter, you have any more comments or?
Just thanks. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, John, thank you. Thank you so very much. And I know that everybody has really enjoyed this. And since it's been recorded, you'll have a lot more people looking at it. So it'll live on forever. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And good night and have a good night's sleep.
Right. Well, I'm going to curl up with my Ozarka, and that's the only thing I repeat that caused me to almost fall off my chair. Other than it's nighttime, it's bedtime. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I appreciate the comments, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you, John. Good night.